There is no fiction by Neville from the book The Law and the Promise, chapter 4. And he is helping us to understand truly that this thing called mind never sleeps, and that it is always in action, and there is no separation between what we see and know is real and what is seemingly unreal. There's no separation, there's a continuity. It's what I perceive that he is trying to get us to awaken our understanding to. He says, there is no fiction. In other words, it looks like to me he's saying that everything is real. There is no fiction. Sometimes you've heard it says, that's in your imagination. It's true. It's not fiction, in other words. There's a reality to things that even that are not apparent. It's not fiction, it's real. So let's look for that. He says, now he has 2 or 3 examples or demonstrations here in this chapter that the story might be changed or different, but he is saying absolutely nothing different than he has said in all of the other demonstrations and examples in all of his teachings. One thing about Neville that is very plain is that he's very repetitive, very redundant. It's over and over and over the same thing, and he's got about 50 or 60, 70 or fewer books. I'm just exaggerating. But he's talking about one single thing in all of those books, and that is imagination, the power of imagination, and that imagination is God in you. Imagination. Over and over and over, and book after book after book, and stories after stories after stories, and examples after examples after examples, and demonstrations after demonstrations. He's talking about one single thing, and that is imagination. So we should already be some powerful demonstrators, and we shall be some awesome miracle workers by the time we get to wherever it is that we're trying to get to. And reading and studying this stuff. Don't you agree?
Yes. Yes.
Watch and see what he's saying again about imagination. And aren't you glad that you are so patient with yourself?
Yes.
Because if you could have given up. Because you're coming here to hear the same old thing over and over and over. But look how patient you are with yourself. Look how tolerant you are with yourself. And what if you give up? And don't you find this don't you find this becoming easier? And no, it is not easy. But don't you find it easier and easier to practice this stuff?
Yes, it does.
Whereas before it'd be a week or two before you get back to it, now you find yourself 3 or 4 days getting back to it. That's improvement. That's growth. You know it's true. 21 days. We're practicing. We're trying to, as a group, support each other in doing a 21-day healing meditation. I'm not going to ask how many of you have done it every night for the past week. We got one person who says I have the 2. 3, 4, that's pretty
Every
good.
day. Every day.
That is so beautiful because the count is on that day.
Okay. She said we started on the 21st of March. And so let's see. Now, it's okay for your days to stop and start. It's okay for your 21 day to be your 21 day, however it's falling. But we need to do something with some consistency. We need to practice, and what you're doing is training the mind. And what you're doing is setting the ego on alert. You know, say, watch out, I'm coming for you, instead of you coming for me.
That's right.
And it becomes easier and easier with practice. What you're going to hear in these three examples, or two, he's got 2 or 3 examples of people who practice the principle that we're going to talk about, and each of them make their breakthroughs in around 3 weeks, 21 days. 21 days now can be, if we don't take it literally, these happen to be literal, but we don't have to deal with it literally. Your 21 days can be your 21 days, whatever period of time it takes for you to apply these principles, these truths, this way of doing things to make your breakthrough. It could be 30 days, 60 days, it could be 4 days, it could be 8, so don't put 21 days because it could happen before then. He says here, if an imaginal activity can produce a physical effect, if an imaginal activity can produce something, our physical world must be essentially imaginal.
Yes.
Everything that you're experiencing in life is imaginal.
Yes.
To prove this would require merely that we observe our imaginal activities and watch to see whether or not they produce corresponding external effects. If they do, then we must conclude that there is no fiction. There is no fiction. Today's imaginal dreams, or fiction, become tomorrow's fact. Today's imaginal drama, or fiction, become tomorrow's fact. If we had this wider view of causation, if we really understood this, if we had this wider view of causation, or how things are caused, or what is behind things that's happening in our lives, or what is behind things not happening in our lives that we desire, if we had this wider view of true causation, and what is that? That today's imaginal drama, the things that I'm thinking about in my mind, which haven't happened yet, or which I desire to, and I'm seeing it as a fiction, I'm seeing it as things that I imagine. If we had this wider view of causation, that today's imaginal drama or fiction become tomorrow's fact, okay, then we would realize our responsibility. Now, what we're going to work with right here is this word responsibility. Then we would realize our responsibility as a creator and imagine only the best imaginable. We really realized it. Then we would realize our responsibility as a co-creator with God. But this word's responsibility, you're going to have a whole different understanding of through this lesson. Let's kind of help each other out with understanding what he is saying here by meditating on the word responsibility in this context. What do you think he's saying? So you have to look at it with synonyms in mind. I'm going to reread it, and I want you to help develop some synonyms in this context of what I see he is saying And he's tying it back to give you an example, to give you a cue of what I'm looking for. He is trying to help us to understand our true relationship with causation or with God as a co-creator. We are co-creators with God. And we are creating at all times, all the time, through our feeling. Feeling is the secret. Whatever you're feeling, whatever is on that loop that's going around in your mind, that's the drama that he's been talking about. That's mental causation that he's talking about. It's tomorrow's facts. That's it. That's the fiction. That's the fiction he's talking about. Hasn't come to pass yet. Things that we desire, the things that we want to remove, the things that we want healed, whatever thoughts on that loop that's going on, that's fiction right now, but it is tomorrow's fact. So therefore, he says, then we should realize our responsibility as a creator, and therefore imagine only the best imaginable. Imagine only what you desire. Responsibility here, in this sense, let me run through this and then I'll ask you. That's all. Responsibility means accountability. Accountability. You're accountable for that, what's going on in that loop. You're accountable. And responsibility here means answerability. You have to answer to. And you have an obligation, responsibility. You have an you have a duty. And you're gonna see that word duty pop up in a couple of lines down in his writing. You have a duty, you have an obligation, you have an answerability, you have a calling, responsibility. You have a compulsion, you're compelled to, you a responsibility. You as a co-creator. All right, just 1 second. If we had this wider view of causation, that causation is mental, not physical, that our mental states, that our present mental states are causative of physical effects. It's causing everything that has happened, that is happening, that is going to happen. Then we would realize our responsibility, your power. The awesome power that the only change that will ever occur is through your wand. Your wand. Your wand. Your word is your wand. Your word is your wand. So you are responsible. So therefore you're responsible. Today's imaginal drama or fiction becomes tomorrow's fact. Go ahead.
So when God has answered a prayer for you, and you realize that it's been an answered prayer, something you've asked for 30 plus years, and it just sweeps into your life unexpectedly, I hear you saying, co-creating, no, I'm co-creating. It was an unconscious, it was in the subconscious, but for it to come in and consciously. So now, what I hear you saying, now I'm responsible for co-creating with Spirit regarding that answered prayer.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's deep.
Absolutely.
So, in doing so, it's staying focused on God, what we were talking about, and letting, the old behaviors and all of that, what do you do with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on. So the question was, in dealing with the old behaviors and all of that, then that's the purpose of talking about responsibility.
Okay.
Because now you're seeing that you're responsible to answer that question. You're responsible for learning how to deal with those old behaviors because that's what's continuing to our future. In the loop, it keeps
Yes.
bringing you the same old thing, the same old results, the old behavior. And the old behavior could be, the example that we want to use here is not controlling and disciplining your mind. Just like tonight is the 4th night of my 21 days of falling asleep on this. Old behavior means something's going to come up to prevent you from doing it. It could be an upset with somebody. It could be, I'm just tired. I don't feel like it. It just be, I forgot. That's old behavior.
Okay.
That's an old behavior, that we want to break the cycle and say, you're going to set yourself up every night so that you know that you're going to have to do it. You can do that. I wake up a couple times during the night. And so before I thought that to be a problem. Now I see that as more of a positive for me now in dealing with meditation, is because if I'm not successful when I first fall asleep at going all the way through this before I fall, I know I got 2 or 3 more opportunities to do it. And that works for me. So somewhere between those 2 or 3 times a week that I'm going to sleep, I'm usually successful at one of those. But I'm waking up naturally, rather than being distracted by a text or a telephone call or that kind of a thing, And so I set myself up that way. And what I do now is that I don't look at waking up during the night as a problem, as I used to look at it. I see it as an opportunity, and it's more of a blessing. And I believe that I'm being awakened at this particular time for communion and for meditation. So rather than doing anything else but that, I do that. So, and I'm also awakened more frequently now from dreaming. I'm dreaming more now. So you'll find dreaming to become more frequent when you're doing this kind of work than you did before.
Yes, it does.
And you'll find that your dreams are more vivid
Yes.
now than they were before.
Yes.
And you'll find that you're having visitation and visitors who are coming with a message. And sometimes, if you don't get up and write it right away, you won't know who that was.
That's right.
Usually you'll have an identification when you have a sense of who that was that's visited you. And but then if you wait till 2 or 3 hours later, you won't remember.
That's right.
Am I right?
Yes.
And you won't really remember much of it if you don't get up and write it.
That's right.
If you don't write it then.
That's right.
So going back to your question of behavior, this is how you change your behavior, and the behavior that I'm focused on now is mind distraction and training your mind to do this. In my writing of my journal yesterday morning, I wrote that this is the second dream that I've had 2 nights in a row dealing with death, and the death or near death of a baby. The first night I didn't record. The second morning from the night before is when I started writing it, and that's when I recalled the first one, when I started recording the second one. And what was happening here is, in that particular moment, it seemed to me that the understanding of the dream was being given to me. So if you ask me, I had a dream, and what does this mean? I cannot answer that question for you. Maybe somebody else can. I've never claimed to be able to do that. But for me, there's a sense of the meaning of the dream comes to me as I am recording the dream. Do you hear what I'm saying? And so what I began to write is that this symbolizes to me, this is what I was writing in my journal, that old thought patterns around this that I'm praying for are dying. And new birth, there's a new birth that is happening through me in this particular area. Do you see? So that's what that death represented to me.
Right.
Old thought patterns are being chemicalized, you know, passing away. And I'm coming into new birth.
Right.
That's what I sensed and that's what I felt. And so, and as you said, so now I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. So that to me ties right into here. Then we would realize our responsibility as a creator and imagine only the best imaginable. So can you see an example? I'm imagining only the best imaginable. Somebody else would probably have begun to worry about who's going to die and start dealing with it literally. Do you see? The ego will have you ask questions to which there are no answers.
Yeah. Right.
And that's what's going on. See, for me, I let all those questions go and just do this and then believe. Then we would realize our responsibility as a creator and imagine only the best imaginable. It doesn't mean that you got to describe it and define it. As you said, so I just was led to, I felt I would pray for the situation. That's the best imaginable. Don't start labeling and filling in the blanks. And dismiss the question after question after question after, those are ego questions. I will never I don't try to answer those questions. Some people do. But it's time for you to dismiss those questions. Those are ego questions. The ego will form this question and that question and that question. Now you got another birthday. And now you're 65, 67, 60. Still, let the questions go. Because those are, they've never been answered to your satisfaction.
No, they haven't.
They've never been answered to your satisfaction. And you can read book after book after book after book that are written to answer those questions. And you have a whole bookshelf. And they got all the answers.
But she still ain't enough.
And they're, you know, they got answers. I seek my answer from within.
Yes.
What you're sensing, that's your answer. What you're feeling, that's your answer. Today's imaginal drama or fiction become tomorrow's fact. If we had this wider view of causation, that causation is mental, not physical, that our mental states are causative of physical effects, then we would realize our duty. There it is. What is the difference between duty and responsibility?
None.
That's what responsibility is.
Yeah.
Then we would realize our duty as a creator and imagine only the best imaginable. Then that takes care of all the other questions. And you don't know what the best imaginable is. But imagine only best imaginable is God's ways are beyond finding out. God has a plan here that I know not of. All I know is that something good is on the way.
Yes.
All I know is that this has happened for a reason.
Yes.
All I know is that I am here for such a time as this. All I know is that you acting a fool and you don't even know why. I'm cool. I shall not be moved. That's the best imaginable.
Yes.
But if you're going to start describing it and defining it and coloring it and you know what it is, the best imaginable is I'm getting myself in position here because something is about to happen.
Okay.
Through this, whatever it is that is happening.
Right.
I think you said incident, not accident. That's the best imaginable. This is an incident, not an accident. That's the best imaginable. I don't know what anything is for. That's the best imaginable. I don't know what anything is for. All I know is that God's highest good is coming out of this situation. If you hadn't gotten up and acted a fool like you're acting in something, then I wouldn't be being prepared for something that's about to happen in my life. That's the best imaginable. There are no accidents in God and with God. That's the best imaginable. But the other stuff, leave all the other questions alone. Those are ego questions, yes.
So, okay, just to reiterate what you said, because Spirit has told me to stop questioning. And I hear you saying, those are, the Spirit said, Heather, the time for questioning is over. To hear you say that, that's ego question. I've never heard it put like that.
Yeah.
Focus on the best imaginable. Stop all the questions, just drop it all.
Shatter.
Shatter. Okay, that's the.
Shatter. The drama of life originates in the imagination of man.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Yes.
The drama of life originates in the imagination of man. The real act of becoming takes place within man's imagination and not without. So he concludes by saying, imagination, what? Creates reality. Imagination creates reality. Now, he's going to give two examples here that's going to play out everything that we just talked about. Now, how many have heard of the ship called the Titanic? Do you know what happened to the ship?
Thank
It sank. This man's getting ready to blow your mind with this story about the Titanic. And he's been telling you where your Titanic came from. Your Titanic, your problem in your life. Your catastrophe in your life.
An example.
An example of where things are caused mentally before they, in fiction, before they show up. In reality, there's a cause somewhere. Just didn't show up out of nowhere. That goes back to responsibility.
Yes.
This is power. This is prayer empowerment, as I see it. This is what we're learning, helping us to see. It's showing you the awesome power that you have to correct whatever it is in your life that you're trying to change. You got the power to do it. This is empowering.
Yes.
But what's important now is to stop looking back. That's where our problem is. This is about what happened in the past, but it's telling you how to use this to look forward and create forward and stop healing stuff in the past.
Yeah.
It's you created it
Yes.
by thought or default, by commitment or by omitment, by known and unknown stuff. So you don't know where that stuff is coming from. And you have to remember that your life is hooked up and connected with about 8,639,500 people. So it could have bled in through your association with them somewhere, maybe in 1980, maybe in 230 AD, or maybe when now, those are ego questions. And do you know there are books and books and books and books and books written with answers to those questions? And people make big money. I can write a book too. There are answers, but who the heck want them? I don't want them. But here's part of our problem with prayer. Is trying to heal something that has already happened.
Say that again?
Trying to heal something that has already happened. Trying to heal problems. Trying to heal sickness. Trying to heal broken relationships. Trying to heal poverty. Trying to heal financial system. Trying to heal mess. Trying to heal, that's what the problem is. How can you heal what is not real?
Yes.
Now here on one hand, you're going to stand firm. It's not real, it's not real. Then you're praying on it, and praying about it. Then you're learning, trying to see how to heal it. This story is about something that happened. But he's giving you the story as an example to teach you how to go forward and create what you do want and stop trying to correct
Yes,
what you don't want.
yes.
That was the message on Barabbas or Jesus. Remember? So let's see.
Well, if you dream something you don't want, but you correct it with a dream that, or a prayer that you do want, then that cancels out the bad?
Yeah, as long as you're moving forward, it's canceling out the bad.
Okay.
As long as you're dreaming it says, imagining the unimaginable. Yeah, it's just natural. It's just inherent. It's just automatic that the bad is being canceled out. But you're not doing anything to do that because you're not working on canceling out the bad. Canceling out the bad. You know where the light shined, the darkness comprehends it not. Light shines away the darkness.
Yeah,
That's canceling out the bad.
yeah, yes.
But you're not trying to shine away the darkness. Your mind is on the light.
Yes.
Darkness is automatic.
That's right.
So you need power to try to cancel out the darkness, but you don't need any power to bring in the light.
Right.
So if you focus on the light, then you're not worried about the darkness. The darkness is automatically eliminated.
That's right.
But you can get books on how to eliminate darkness. You can take classes. And people are living royally on selling the answers, the books, workshops, and seminars. But this is free. In 1898, a struggling author named Morgan Robertson, what's that word, concocted? Fiction. It was fiction, concocted, fiction. Dreamed up something. Made up something.
Yes.
Concocted a novel, made up a story, dreamed up a story about a fabulous Atlantic liner far larger than any that had ever been built. How many people have already read this story? You've had it a couple, 3 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, Robertson loaded his ship with rich and complacent people and then wrecked it one cold April night on an iceberg. This is fiction. This somehow showed the futility of everything, and in fact, the book was called Futility when it appeared that year, published by the firm of M.F. Mansfield. Oh, Lord. The book was written, and 14 years later,
I'll be damned.
see stuff that's showing up in my life now, set in motion 20 years ago.
Ah, gosh darn.
Things that you're having, that you don't know where it came from, so why do you need to worry about that?
Don't worry.
14 years later, a British shipping company named White Star Line built a steamer remarkably like the one in Robertson's novel.
Ah, gosh darn.
14 years later, somebody else comes along and starts building a ship, knowing nothing about this novel that was written 14 years earlier.
What if you read?
The new liner was 66,000 tons displacement. Robertson's in his novel was 70,000. The real ship was 882 feet long. The fictional one was 800 feet long. Both could carry about 3,000 people, and both had enough lifeboats for only a fraction of this number. But then, this didn't seem to matter because both were labeled unsinkable. On April 19, 1912, now it was back in 1898 that the man wrote the novel. On April 19, 1912, the real ship left Southampton on her maiden voyage to New York. Her cargo included a priceless copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar and a list of passengers collectively worth $250 million, full of rich people. On her way over, she too struck an iceberg and went down on a cold April night. Robinson called this ship the Titan. The White Star Line called the ship the Titanic. Had Morgan Robertson known that imagining creates reality, that today's fiction is tomorrow's fact, wouldn't he have written the novel he told you? After you have read this story, you will understand. After you have read this story, now that you've read this story, now you will understand why he is so confident that he can predetermine any materialistic future he desires, and why he is equally sure that others give reality to what were otherwise a mere figment of his imagination, that there exists and can exist only outside imagining on some level or other, that there exists and can exist nothing outside imagining and on some level or other. Now, I'm going to reread that little paragraph, that little section, to reinforce this. Some people will read this story and go right back to the questions here that were answered and begin to, and this is part of the problem in our prayer work, are still looking on the past. You'll sit here and think about this story in the context of all of the facts that are in here about what happened to create this, the man who wrote the novel, and eventually this thing came to pass and all the people were killed, and then the ego is going to start asking all the questions that there are answers to in all of these books around the world that have been written, instead of bringing this down to what is on your goal for prayer? What is it that you are working on to change in your life? Those are the only questions you want. Come back, let all that mess alone.
Right.
And then ask the questions about how did this man use his imagination to bring this about, so that I can use the same principle and the same practice to move forward and see my answer demonstrated. That's all I want to know. Because my birthday comes so fast. Before I wake up, September's going to be here. And I'm sitting here asking a bunch of dumb questions. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes, I
And
do.
trying to find answers to them.
Yes, I do.
And there are no answers
No,
to
there isn't.
them.
No,
There are no
answer.
answers. So the only answer I want to know is, how can I practice this for a straight 21 days without being interrupted? Nothing continues in being. This supports what I'm saying right now. Nothing continues in being save what imagining supports.
Yes.
That's what I'm working on for the next 21 days.
Okay.
Nothing continues in being. This stuff that's happened in the past, that's been created out of my thought, that's not going to continue in being until my imagination stops supporting it. The way I'm going to get my imagination to stop supporting it is stay in the light.
Yes. Yes.
Is continue to stay on this practice. God's going to take care of that. Because if I continue, the ego is going to take you back to what caused this. All the causation, something I didn't do right, something that I'm not doing right, something that, and this is hard for me to let go. Stop, it will be taken care of. How? There's the ego.
Yeah.
There's no how. With God, there's no answer to the how.
Nope.
With God and being a co-creator, there are no how answers.
That's right. God is the how.
But in the books, there are answers to the how, but they're really what? There's not how. What caused it, what you did, what you need to do. Okay. As my story begins, so here, that completes that story. But here's another one, and then we're going to close with. As my story begins at the age of 19, I was a mildly successful dancing teacher and continued in this static. Let me see if there's is there two stories here or one?
No, it's one, but it's a lot of segments of it.
No, I said, okay, this is just one. Okay. Now listen to this. and see how this person practiced this 3 weeks experience here and what happened. As my story begins at the age of 19, I was a mildly successful dancing teacher and continued in this static state for almost 5 years. At the end of this time, I met a young lady who talked me into attending your lectures. So this is a person at 19 years old, started attending Neville's lectures. My thought upon hearing you say, imagining creates reality, was that the entire idea was ridiculous. However, I decided to accept your challenge and disprove your thesis. I bought your book Out of This World, and read it many times. Still unconvinced, I set myself a rather ambitious goal. My present position was an instructor with the Arthur Murray Dance Studio, and my goal was to own a franchise and be boss of my own studio. This seemed to be the most unlikely thing in the world, as franchisees were extremely difficult to secure. But on top of this fact, I was completely without the necessary funds to begin such an operation. Nevertheless, I assumed the feeling of my wish fulfilled as night after night in my imagination, I went to sleep imagining my own studio. Got it? Mm-hmm. Now here's a person who wasn't convinced.
Mm-hmm. And
He wasn't convinced yet. But do you know what he says? I want to try this.
Mm-hmm.
So God just meets you at your own level.
That's
Do you
right.
remember the scripture that says, if you have faith, the grain of a mustard seed?
Yes.
Do you know what we do? Going back to the what? To the ego questions and all that, to the material. We're not in the spiritual yet because we start trying to build our faith. We're trying to grow strong in spirit. We're trying to, you got to become spiritual. They're distracted again, and your birthday is going to be around in just a few days. Those months come by real fast, especially when you pass 50. They just, and don't get 60 more. Somebody's messing with it while somebody's turning that down. And you're still dealing with silly questions. Here this man didn't need his faith. He had the faith, the grain of a mustard seed. He didn't have as much faith as Pastor so-and-so and Bishop so-and-so and the Pope and all of the spiritual people. Just faith of a grain, just a little faith. Faith has no size.
That's right.
Faith is not quantifiable.
No, it ain't.
Faith is faith.
Yep.
So you have enough faith. This says that if this man can do what this story is about to tell me, he wasn't even convinced. And here we are laying here, we've been doing this stuff. Oh, I've been studying this since 1930.
And you're still here.
Oh, I know so-and-so. I've been in this workshop. I read this book. I know this and I know that. And I got a license. And I got this and I got this. Man had none of that.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I assumed the feeling of my wish fulfilled as night after night in my imagination, I went to sleep imagining my own studio. 3 weeks later, 21, how many days is it?
21 days.
21 days.
Woo!
3 weeks later, a friend called me from Reno. He had the Murray studio there and said it was too much for him to cope with alone.
Oh my God. It just hit me. Okay.
He offered me a partnership and I was delighted, so delighted, in fact, that I hastened to Reno on borrowed money and promptly forgot all about you and your story of imagination. My partner and I worked hard and were very successful. But after a year, I was still not satisfied. I wanted more. I began thinking of ways and means to get another studio. All my efforts failed. One night, as I retired, I was restless and decided to read. As I looked through my collection of books, I noticed your slender volume, Out of This World. I thought of this silly nonsense I had gone through 1 year ago before getting my own studio. The words in my mind electrified me. I reread the book that night, and later in my imagination, I heard. In my imagination, I heard my superior praised the good job we had done in Reno and suggests we require a second studio as we had a second location ready for us if we desire to expand. The man didn't literally, physically talk to him. He said later in the night, I heard my superior praise the good job we had done. This is what we're saying that we want to do. You have to hear
Yes.
whoever comes to your mind. You don't have to think, now tonight I'm going to hear Bill say this. No, you don't. It'll come to you.
Yes, it will.
You don't predetermine whose voice you're going to hear,
No, you don't.
but expect to hear.
That's right.
This man, so I reenacted this imaginal scene nightly without fail. That scene, he reacted nightly without fail. Okay? 3 weeks. How many days in 3 weeks? And then 21 days later, from the first night of my imaginal drama, it materialized. Almost word for word. My partner accepted the new studio in Bakersfield, and I had the Reno studio alone. Now I was convinced of the truth of your teaching, and never again will I forget. Now I wanted to share this wonderful knowledge of imaginal power with my staff, and they didn't believe this story. A young teacher told me that he believed my story, but said it would have been that it probably happened anyway in time. He insisted the entire theory was nonsense, but stated that if I could tell him something of an incredible nature that would actually happen, and which he could witness, then he would believe. All right, so I accepted this challenge and conceived another test. The Reno studio is the most magnificent in the entire Murray system because of the small population count in the city. There are over 300 studios in the country with much larger populations, therefore providing greater possibilities to draw from. So my test was this. I told the teacher that within the next 3 months, at the time of a national dance convention, the little Reno studio would be the foremost topic of conversation at that convention. He calmly stated this was quite impossible. So the man is getting ready to use his imagination, who at one time didn't believe. Now that he's convinced, he has become a master of this thing. That night when I retired, I felt myself standing before a tremendous audience. Do you see? I felt myself standing before a tremendous audience. And I'm going to digress from this story. And I felt myself walking into that appointment with that doctor. And I heard her say, my God, what have you been doing? And I felt myself, and I said, what? And she said, you don't need to come back. Your blood work says, there's nothing there. The x-ray says, come on now, Dr. Barbara King. How many of you ever heard of her?
Oh, yes. How you know her? Love her. Love her.
They looked at the x-ray. The doctors were walking by the room. She's in a tuberculosis spinal thing. Incurable at that time. She says she's laying there, and the doctors keep passing by, looking at her peculiar. She said, what's going on? They sit down and said, looked at the x-rays where there was nothing before, now the lungs are grown back. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes. She's a
Yes.
So the point is that not dealing with her, talking about you. Talking about me, talking about you. I'm saying now, this is what the man did. So this is what we do now.
Yes.
You see yourself sitting in the office of the real estate person, closing the deal, signing the contract. You see yourself walking into the house with your keys and standing in there and seeing the view in whatever sense it feel it. Entertain. See yourself entertaining your guests in your new location. You see yourself, fill in the blank. You get into the feeling of death. These are the stories all through here.
Yes.
But are we doing that?
Yes.
Falling asleep into that state of the desire fulfilled.
Yes.
How many people see themselves at the funeral, in their funeral?
See what?
Funeral. You know, if you were honest, you know people who have. They've already seen themselves. It's okay to be practical, plan, but don't get into it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Boy, you have to have the right reason for doing the planning. But some people jump all up in the casket. Okay. That night when I retired, I felt myself standing before a tremendous audience. I was speaking on creative imagining and felt the nervousness of being before them, such a vast audience. But I also felt the wonderful sensation of audience acceptance. See, you felt all of that. I heard the roar of applause. And as I left the stage, I saw Mr. Murray himself come forward and shake my hand. I saw him. I saw Mr. Murray himself come forward and shake my hand. I saw the realtor coming to me and unlocking the door and saying, walk in to your new home. I saw that. I saw myself sitting there with the banker, on this project that I'm working for, and told me that the funding was approved. I saw that. I reenacted this entire drama night after night. It began to take on the tones of reality, and I knew I had done it again. My imaginal drama materialized down to the last detail. My little Reno studio was the talk of the convention, and I did appear on that stage just as I had done in my imagination.
Amen. Yes.
Within 3 weeks at the bottom, Mr. Murray called me and offered a studio in a city of 1.5 million people. It is now my goal to make my studio the greatest and biggest in the entire system. Have you been inspired? Have you been motivated to keep on going?
Yes. Yes.
Then let's say every day.
Every
Every day.